Alright guys, so we are going to be making a foldable with the paper that I gave you in class today to go over the 8 phases of the lunar cycle. So what I did is I took that piece of paper that is standard like this and I turned it landscape style and then I folded it in to where the two sides meet and I creased it. This is called a window pane because it kind of looks like it can open like a window. I then took a ruler and I measured the whole length and I divided it into 4 equal sides going down vertically on both sides because there are 8 phases of the lunar cycle, so we do need a section for each phase. So go ahead and pause the video now and fold your paper so that it looks like mine. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start with is the way the lunar cycle always starts, and that is with the new moon. The new moon is always going to be the first phase. It marks, a new cycle, hence why they call it new moon. So let's write new moon on the outside. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so y'all can see it. Okay, so let's open it up and kind of continue your line if you can to the best of your ability so you won't write all crooked because I tend to do it all the time. So let's actually describe how the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon are aligned during a new moon. So for every phase, we're going to talk about how the Earth, Sun, and Moon are aligned, how the Moon looks from Earth, and then we're going to draw a picture of the space view. Because when we talk about the lunar cycle, there's always going to be 2 views, space perspective and Earth perspective. So the Earth, should be capitalized, Sun, and Moon are all in a straight line during a new moon. And a straight line is 180 degrees. Now, the important thing is, yes, you do need to know that during a new moon, they are all perfectly in a straight line, but the moon is in the middle. Because you'll notice that the moon could be on the other side, and that would be a completely different phase. And so this is where I always want you to start. Now, I know without a doubt that the lunar cycle is going to be on the star test, but I have no idea how the picture is going to look. And so my trick is if you can always find the new moon and then go counterclockwise, you'll always be able to figure out the phases. So over here, I'm going to draw a picture, and I'm just going to put my sun over here on the left. You can use a highlighter or just, label it the sun. And then I said that the Earth, Sun, and Moon are in a straight line. So then I'm going to draw a smaller moon and a bigger Earth. Now, obviously, they're not to scale. Okay, and I'm just going to put an E so you know that this is the Earth. So because they are in a straight line, if this side of half is facing the sun, then that means the half that is facing the Earth is black. Now realize that the moon actually never changes. It is always half lit and half dark. And the half lit is always facing the Earth. Is always facing the sun, just like when the Earth is half lit and half dark for day and night. So the reason why a new moon looks completely dark to us on space isn't because it's actually changing, but it's the angle that we see the moon. Notice the dark side is facing us. And also, if you realize you can never see a new moon at night because it's actually out during the day. Because if we were to do day and night for Earth, then this half would be day and this half would be night. So it's always completely black on a new moon night because the day is literally out. The moon is literally out during the day. Okay, so this is space perspective. So let's draw what the moon looks like in boxes on the top from the Earth view, because you are going to have to know it by both ways. So the new moon is probably the second easiest phase to draw because it is where it looks completely black. So just shade it completely in. For some reason, when we go over the lunar cycle, a lot of people always want to think the shading represents the part we see. The shading that we're going to do is always going to represent the part we don't see. And we will always leave void the part that we see. Okay, so new moon, Earth, Sun, and Moon are in a straight line, and it looks completely dark. Right, so the next phase of the lunar cycle is called a waxing crescent. Now, if you all know what a crescent shape is, a banana, some people even like to call it God's fingernail, that is a crescent. So let's go ahead and extend the lines. So during a waxing crescent, the Earth, Sun, and Moon are at a 45-degree angle. And the way that I remember that is a 45-degree angle is a small angle, which in math you call acute, and acute means small. So whenever the Earth, Sun, and the Moon are at a small angle, you will always see a small part of the moon, which is what we call a crescent. Now, because it is called waxing, waxing means to grow. So whenever the moon is actually growing bigger every day, that is what we call waxing. And you can always tell that it's going to be waxing because the right side will be lit. So if the right side of the moon is lit, it is waxing. If the left side of the moon is lit, it is waning. And crescent, you know what a crescent shape looks like. So let's draw our sun. Our Earth. Now, our moon, we said, was 45. So that's going to be right about here. And again, our moon is always half lit, half dark, with the lit side facing the sun. So notice that this is a 45-degree angle. And so this is what we call a crescent. Now, the moon hasn't actually changed, but the angle that we see it has. So we're only going to see probably this tiny section right here, which is why most of the moon is still going to look dark. So in our Earth view, we said the right side is lit during waxing, so we're going to draw a tiny little crescent shape and shade everything on the left. So this is what the moon is going to look like on Earth, but in reality, this is what's happening. So the only thing that's changing is the angle. So it does kind of look like a backwards C. So we're going to write a C for crescent. And because the right side is lit, it is waxing. So let's move on to first quarter. I'll go ahead and draw my last line. Okay, during the first quarter, the Earth, Sun, and Moon are at a 90-degree angle, which we call a right angle. And because we're still in the waxing phase, it is still the right half of the moon is going to be lit. Now notice which way is the moon revolving around the Earth. The moon, like I said, everything in space revolves in a counterclockwise motion. So if you were to go back, you're always going to find the new moon because it is always going to be the moon in between the sun and the Earth. Because if they tried to show you this with all 8 moons, just figure it out. Whichever one is in the middle, that's the new moon, and then you go counterclockwise, which as you can see, we're doing. Because the sequence of the lunar cycle is never, ever going to change. That is why it's called a cycle. So if you were to see, this is the angle that we're seeing it from, which is why from Earth it looks half lit, half dark. which again, the right side is going to be lit. So even though it looks exactly opposite from how it is in Earth in this phase, it's just from the angle. So let's write half. Whenever you see half a moon, it's always going to equal a quarter. And I know that gets confusing, and people always wonder, well, why do we call this a quarter? Because if half the moon's always lit, and half of it appears to be lit when we're only seeing half, a half of a half is a quarter. And because the right is lit, that is waxing. So this is a first quarter, because if you'll notice, it's the first quarter that we've come to. All right, and then the next phase is called a waxing gibbous. And in Latin, the word gibbous means large. So you can expect that we're going to have a large moon. So it is where the Earth, Sun, and Moon are at a 135-degree angle, which in math we call that an obtuse angle, which is a very large. So because this is a large angle, we are going to see a large moon. So down here, let's write a little note that gibbous means more than half, but not full. So if you're ever looking at the moon and you can tell that it's obviously bigger than a quarter, but it's not completely full, then it is a gibbous. And then just look to see what side is lit. If the right side's lit, it's a waxing gibbous. And if the left side's lit, it is a waning gibbous. And this angle is 135 degrees. So from Earth, we're going to have our moon, but this time the white part is going to be larger than a half, and it's going to be on the right side. And this kind of looks like a D, so we're going to say that a D is gibbous, whether it looks forward or backwards. And it's still the right, so it is still waxing. Okay? So we're going to stop here because we've done half the cycle, and then tomorrow's homework I'll go ahead and do the other 4. But I just want you to make sure that you're understanding how the moon revolves around the Earth, and that it's the angle that changes. So when we come back, let's go ahead and label these so that tomorrow's video will be shorter. We're going to do full moon, and then we'll start waning gibbous. And I bet you can figure out what waning means if it's the opposite of waxing. Then we have third or last quarter, whichever one you want to call it. It doesn't matter. I do believe the STAR test uses third quarter. And then the last one is waning crescent. Okay? So this is where we'll finish, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.